Welcome to the Get Real Podcast, your high-octane boost of full-on reality therapy for personal, business, and investing success with your host, Ron Phillips, because somebody's got to tell it like it is.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Get Real Podcast. Ron Phillips here. I figured today we should talk about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. It's all over the news. It's all over Facebook. Apparently, they've done something, and everybody's talking about it. No, I'm just kidding. We're not really going to talk about them. But they did do something. They're supposedly, persona non grata right now. I find it amazing the kind of stories that capture people's attention. And that one does, even though I can't see one way that affects my life whatsoever. But what I am going to talk about today would potentially affects all of us, I think, anybody listening to the show. You wouldn't be here if you weren't interested in real estate, at least a little bit. And so I think this will pertain to you. In a list of shows I've done about ridiculous headlines, it doesn't matter if it's politics or the real estate market or the stock market. It doesn't make any difference. Anyone who gets their news from headlines is getting no news. There's no way you're getting any news. So this one caught my attention today. Builders hit the brakes on home construction as tariffs and weak demand weigh on sales. Now that is a hell of a headline. So let's get down into the body of this and let's just talk about this. So here are the numbers reported in this MarketWatch report. Construction of new homes fell 11.4% in March. Okay, now this is really important. They fell 11.4%. That's not that much, number one, okay? But the reason they did is that builders pulled back in the face of high interest rates and waning homebuyer sentiment. So in their first line this is literally the first line after that headline about tariffs, they don't mention tariffs at all. Oh my goodness, this is so good. In March, housing starts fell to a 1.32 million annual pace, which, by the way, it took us years to get up to this pace, which is a normal pace. Years. And we have a chasm of at least a decade of not building enough homes. All right? Just let's preface that this is not from the article. This is from Ron. Okay, back to the article. They fell to 1.32 million from a pace of 1.49 million the previous month. Okay? So that's how many houses would be built over the entire year if construction took place at the pace from last month, right? So they fell from 1.49 to 1.32. Okay. Now we're getting into the body of this thing. New home construction is still up 1.9% from the same period last year. So it fell a little bit, still up. Funny, that wasn't in the headline either. Now, here we go. Here's the factors. Builders slowed down construction of new homes due to a combination of factors. Higher cost of building materials due to the tariffs on imported goods imposed by Trump. Now, this is not a show about tariffs because unlike everybody on social media, I am not an expert on tariffs. And so I'm not going to play one today on the show for you. However, I think I do know enough about the tariffs to know that when they were instituted, it didn't immediately cause a price rise that would have caused the construction to fall in the month of March because they weren't there in the month of March. So I don't know what in the world these people were talking about. Now, that might have something to do with what's coming. I don't know, but I don't think it impacted last month. I really don't. But what did is what they continue to say. Persistently high interest rates and waning buyer sentiment. Waning buyer sentiment is because of persistently high interest rates. We already all knew that. I don't know why I throw the tariffs thing in there. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about here. Now, given the craziness in the economy, we may not see another rebound, it says. Now, that might have ordinarily occurred in April. We'll see what happens in April. Building permits, which are a sign of future construction, rose 1.6% from the previous month to 1.4 million rate. Okay. So housing starts went down. Housing building permits went up. So I'm having a hard time in my mind taking all of these stats that they're saying and making sense out of the headline of this story. I really am. Key details. Single family construction fell 14.2% in March from the month before. Not from the year before, from a month before. Remember, it's up year over year. Okay? That's how they mess with the statistics. The pace of construction was uneven across the U.S. New home construction surged in the Midwest by 76.2%, but starts fell sharply in the West by 31%. Now, why would that be? We've talked about that on the show before. Real estate is not national. It is local. If the house prices on the West Coast have gotten to the point where they're so outrageously expensive that people can't afford them, well, then the builders are going to slow down building. That makes total sense. In the Midwest, where they haven't gotten completely out of control, and there's still people who need housing, they're still building. Oh, doesn't this hurt sometimes? Just going through how these people write these articles, it's remarkable. I saw another article the other day. I wish I would have bookmarked it for the show, but they were talking about inventory levels and how we have this massive amount of inventory and that it is a buyer's market nationwide. This massive nationwide problem. And here's what they did. Okay, so first off, let's back up. Let's understand what a normal supply of homes is and what constitutes a buyer's market and what constitutes a seller's market. We all know what a seller's market is. We've just lived through it, okay? A pretty psycho seller's market. And that's where we have inventory that's under 5 months supply. And we've had inventory levels that were dramatically low. I mean, they were, between 30 and 60 days of inventory, which is when you get insane price hikes, people paying above asking price, bidding wars on houses. That's what we've all lived through. Somewhere between 4 and 6 months, depending on who you ask, is a normal market. Okay. More than 6 months is what's considered a buyer's market because there's too much inventory, which means the prices, the ability to negotiate goes up. Okay, so let's talk about current supply because this is important. That article referenced that we have almost 9 months supply on the market right now, which would mean this would be a ridiculous buyer's market. Okay, but is that true? Or is that a plucked statistic? That's the question. Well, it depends on how you look at it. Because if you pluck some stats, you could get that. I think right now we do have almost 9 months supply of new construction homes. Okay. But existing homes, we only have like 3.5 months. There's not very many on the market. And the reason there's not very many on the market is because people who have really, really good mortgages on their homes right now aren't selling. And so there's not this big amount of this large supply of homes, of existing homes coming onto the market. And so when you combine all of the inventory, which is what an honest person would do if they were writing an article about the housing inventory level, it's just over 4 months supply. So we're almost, depending on who you ask, we're almost at a normal housing market. Normal housing market. Not a buyer market, not a seller's market, a normal housing market. Now, it feels a little different than that right now. And why does it feel a little different than that? Because it's so unaffordable. And that's because of the interest rates. Now, we had this 1 week where we had the interest rates seemed to be going down, and everything seemed to be going really well. I'm looking up the home affordability. It just hit me. I haven't looked at the home affordability monitor for a little bit from the Atlanta Fed. So I'm looking it up. But these interest rates, right? They dropped. Everybody's trying to figure out, like, well, the Fed didn't do anything. Why did the interest rates drop? Well, because the Fed really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the mortgage interest rates. Now, on this show, primarily we talk about investment property loans, which the interest rates are different. The loan programs are different than your traditional mortgages. Okay. What happened was, when the stock market is doing really, really well, it's very, very strong. Money moves to the stock market because there's big, good returns there. When that happens, money moves out of the bond market. And when the bond market go down, when the 10-year treasury bonds are expensive, they're expensive for a reason. It's because money is moving. And we had massive volatility in that 1 week. Interest rates dropped because all of the money was moving into treasuries because the stock market had tanked. And in the same week, everything turned all back around and everything reversed. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen happen in 1 week. We are back at interest rates that were, back from like January or December, where they were pretty high. And the Fed didn't do anything. It was all just market driven, which is what typically happens. But when the interest rates go up, everybody, and there's so much volatility, people freak out and they don't move. Even though sometimes they should be moving. They don't, because they get scared and freak out. Don't you be one of the people who gets scared about interest rates. I'm looking at the home affordability monitor. You guys can look this up. It's at the Atlanta Fed. If you look up HOAM and then just type in Atlanta Fed, it'll come up. This is a really cool graph. We've talked about this before. I haven't looked at it for a while. Home affordability prior to the crash. So if we go all the way back to like 2007 at the height, home affordability was 45%. The monitor was 45%. Interest rates were 6.8%. Median home price was $231,000. Okay. So fast forward, and the last one of these are always pretty far behind. The last one of these was in January. Okay. Interest rate was 7%. So 0.2 higher. But here's the kicker. Median home price was $390,000. So a full 100, let me just see here, a full 100, let me do the math, a full $160,000 more than it was in 2007 at the height of the market. And the home affordability monitor is still at 47%. It's only 2 percentage points higher than it was back then, but really unaffordable. I mean, still, that's really unaffordable across the country. That is why houses aren't moving that well. Let's really quickly look at a couple of metro areas. Okay, so Kansas City affordability index is at 37. Now, the higher these are, is the more unaffordable, right? So affordability, the affordability threshold is at 30. Okay, so anything under 30 is more affordable. Anything over is less affordable. We're at 47% nationally. Kansas City, like in the Midwest. The reason I wanted to dive into this is because understand why on the West Coast things may be slowing down, and in the middle of the country things aren't slowing down that much. Okay, if 30 is the affordability threshold, Kansas City's only 37%. It's not that bad. Let's look at Los Angeles. Yeah. Home affordability monitor is 87%. 87%. And back in 2007, it got up to 92%. So we're not even back where we were. We almost got there back in 2024, in June of 2024, when the interest rates really spiked, because house prices look like they've been coming down in LA. Yeah, so house prices have been coming down in LA from 994 in June of 2024 to in January, they were 962. So they've been coming down. And that is probably why on the West Coast, the builders have slowed down construction. Now, see, doesn't that make sense? If you just look at some of the data, and I did this while we're on the podcast. I didn't even do a deep dive on this. It makes total sense why certain areas are still increasing in construction and other areas are decreasing in construction. And understanding that is pretty important when you're trying to invest in real estate and understand where to invest in real estate. And understand if it's still a good time to invest in real estate. So I want you to be empowered to make good decisions and not sit in fear based on headlines from reporters who are reporting on things they don't even really understand. I mean, these people do not understand what they're writing. And if they do, shame on them, because they're being dishonest. Let's just call it what it is. Either they don't know, which is bad enough because you shouldn't be writing about something that you don't know, or they're being dishonest, one of the two. So take these articles for what they're worth, guys. They're not worth a ton. And don't sit around and concern yourself. The tariffs have not upset the real estate market yet. I mean, we'll see, but not yet. I mean, we'll see what happens. I guess we've got a 90-day pause on all the tariffs except for China. So if we're getting really inexpensive drywall from China, that could hurt over the next few months. Otherwise, I think we're probably going to be okay on housing prices. All right, guys, that's it for today. Till next time, get out there and make something happen.
This has been the Get Real Podcast. To subscribe and for more information, including a list of all episodes, go to getrealestatesuccess.com.